So Streit going to Tampa or Pittsburgh via Tampa. I think I got that right. And coming to Philadelphia, Valtteri Filppula. He is a 32-year-old, got another year left on the contract. Make some sense of the deal with us. Scott Burnside, ESPN.com, as Ron Hextall continues to kind of hold on here, continuing the patient pass. Scott, welcome aboard as his Flyers team on the outside looking in of the playoff window, but not making any major moves today. Any surprise?
Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what Ron Hextall would have up his sleeve at the deadline this year. The Flyers are in a bit of an interesting, still in a bit of transition, I think it's fair to say. And after making the playoffs last year and probably ahead of schedule, there certainly have been some ups and downs for this team. And I think it's fair to say when you look at their current level of play, notwithstanding the win last night, but I'm not sure they're a playoff team, and I think it's a sort of a conservative approach to the deadline from Ron Hextall probably bears that out. I was a little bit surprised at Valtteri Filppula coming to the Flyers. He's got, as you mentioned, a year left on his deal. It's not a lot of real dollars in terms of what his salary, but he comes with a $5 million cap hit, which is why the Lightning were desperate to get rid of him. Given all the issues that Steve Yzerman has in terms of his salary cap issues and the expansion draft moving forward. And a couple of draft picks come back to Philadelphia. So nice move there. Mark Streit goes, as you mentioned, to Tampa, and then about 2 minutes later is traded to Pittsburgh, where it's entirely possible that Mark Streit will end up on a nice long playoff run this spring for the veteran defenseman. And it's also a day where you see Pierre-Edouard Bellemare and Michal Neuvirth extended by the Flyers. So lots of moving parts for Philadelphia. I would say it's more I think it's interesting to Michal Neuvirth because I think some people thought that he might be a player that would be of interest to the Vegas Golden Knights in terms of a potential expansion roster pickup, and it's just lots of interesting moves for a Flyers team. But I think it's going to be a real struggle for them to make the playoffs this spring.
Okay, yeah, because Scott, we heard from Ron Hextall just a couple of moments ago on the television side over here, and basically he thought that Filppula would be a guy that can help them make a push towards the playoff this year. Do you see him as a guy that can give this team that kind of lift?
I think it's a bit of a stretch. Now, maybe he's going to be in a position here, change of scenery, and maybe that's maybe this new environment for him gives him sort of a push. But I think it is a bit of a stretch to suggest that is possible here. I mean, the Flyers are not out of it by any stretch of the imagination, but I just think that their current level of play suggested that it's too much to expect for them to be in the playoffs this year. I mean, they got 3 teams to jump over to get into a postseason berth. They got 3 wins in their last 10. I think that this is a team that might have hit a wall, and I'm not sure that Valtteri Filppula, as nice a guy as he is the kind of guy that is going to jumpstart, this team's offense and is going to have the kind of meaningful impact that would be required for the Flyers to make that kind of run. So maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I think that's a bit of a stretch to suggest that Filppula reflects that kind of person. Now, I mentioned it was important for the Lightning to move on from Filppula, given his cap hit. The $5 million next year was a huge mouthful for Tampa Bay, given the issues they have in restricted free agents like Tyler Johnson, Andre Palat, Jonathan Drouin. Now, for Ron Hextall, having a body in the lineup that can play, he's assuming he has to play top 6 minutes. At $5 million in your cap hit, he has to play top 6 minutes and be productive to justify that. But maybe that's not a bad thing for a Philadelphia team that still is, sorting through figuring out where its young players are at in terms of their maturation and what they may bring to the table next year. So he's someone that he has under contract for next year. He doesn't have to go out into the free agent market and try and bring someone in. It's still a lot of money for a guy like Filppula. It doesn't matter how you cut it. So, it'll be interesting to see whether he gets, sort of renewed traction in his career given this move. But I must admit, I remain somewhat pessimistic about it.
ESPN Scott Burnside with us. Your take on Neuvirth getting a 2-year extension?
Again, he's a player that has shown, especially with the Flyers, but really throughout his career, he's shown long stretches where he suggests to you that he is going to be a top-flight NHL goaltender and could be a number one goaltender. I mean, there have been some injury issues during his career. I think back to his play against Washington last year when he came on in relief of Steve Mason in that first round playoff loss to Washington, a series that was far, far closer than most of us expected it would be, in large part due to Neuvirth's play there. Is he a franchise type goaltender? Again, I'm not sure he's shown anything to suggest that he can be that kind of guy. But maybe there's not a huge commitment in terms of term, and frankly, really not a huge commitment in terms of dollars. So. I like Michal Neuvirth, right? I mean, there's lots to like about him. So I'm not entirely surprised, but it does reflect a team that I think is, again, when you're talking about a 2-year extension, you're talking about a team that's still very much in transition. And I think this is a team that is ultimately between franchise goaltenders. Now, in some ways, the Flyers have been between franchise goaltenders for about 30 years. So maybe this is nothing new. But, there's certainly been enough from Michal Neuvirth that you can justify this kind of move. And I think it also indicates that the search for the franchise goaltender continues in Philadelphia.
Now, does that deal scream backup, or does it scream, that we got a good deal on a guy? Like, do they view him as the starter, or is that a deal that you would give someone that you would want to be your backup?
Well, to me, this is a Flyer team where everyone has to earn their playing time, and I don't think anything is handed to anyone on this team. And I think, for me, the interesting part from watching from afar, and I really like what Dave Hextall has done with this lineup, and players who, and I'm not suggesting the younger players, whether it's been Konechny or Gosper, have assumed or feel they're entitled to anything. But when you see young top-end players who've had success, and whether it was early in the season like Konechny or certainly all last year with Gosper, when you find, when a coach says you're going to have a seat in the box, you're going to watch, I think that sends a message up and down the lineup that there is no entitlement. And so, you're Michal Neuvirth, and I think he's mature enough now, and at that stage of his career, he should assume nothing, given, even with the extension. I think it's the kind of thing that says, okay, show us what you've got. If you're the guy and can prove it to us, here you go. The job will be yours. But I don't think this suggests one way or the other. I think it suggests, okay, let's truly see what we have here and see if we can make some sort of definitive decision moving forward about whether this is the kind of goaltender that we can hang our hat on, not just for the next couple of years, but beyond that, perhaps.
All right, Flyers make the move. By the way, Michael Raffl out 6 to 8 weeks. That seemingly would end his season as well. So we'll see how they fix that. Jordan Wheel got sent back down. We had him on earlier today. He said he didn't know what his situation was. He did get his first NHL goal last night. So we'll see what they end up doing then. But a lot of Flyers news today. Ron Hextall, he's staying patient, Scott, right? He's holding course.
And I think that's, again, I love the idea of teams that do that chart a course and hold firm to it. We see some. It's easy not to, right? It's easy to, and I'm not saying that the Leafs have completely abandoned whatever plan they have. But, they bring in a couple of veteran guys in Eric Fair and Brian Boyle from Tampa, give up some assets, but not a huge amount. But I don't think the Leafs are ready for the playoffs yet. I mean, we've seen them play very, at times, very, very well. They're always exciting to watch, but they've had a pretty terrible February, and I don't know that they're a team that can hang on to a playoff spot with the moves that some of the other teams in the Eastern Conference made. So it's easy to divert from your plan when you see an opportunity or a window. And it's the Flyers after last year shockingly making the playoffs. Some teams might have altered plans trying to capitalize on that, or maybe done things differently. I do like that they're hanging tight, and there are lots of very good young pieces to this Flyer team. But you can't rush that. You can't make things happen until they're ready to happen, especially with a young, talented team. And I think that's what the Flyers have. But again, there so many things have to fall into place before you can even be a regular playoff team, let alone a team that can challenge, to go deep into the playoffs. And yeah, the Flyers aren't there yet, but I think they're going to get there as long as they do. They have a plan, and Ron Hextall's been very firm about that. And I like that he's holding firm, to that plan. That he's not trying to accelerate. He's not trying to cut any corners, because I think what you see historically is that teams try and cut those corners and accelerate the process when it's not ready to be accelerated, often find themselves fumbling around for 2 or 3 or 4 years before they finally get back on track.
All right, Scott Burnside, NHL. Of course, the trade deadline has come and gone. Are the Flyers better? We'll find out the last 20 games here. Scott, thanks so much.
Yeah, anytime, guys.